I'm Seth Downs, and I'm doing this book video thingy on the J.R.R. Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring. Okay. There are, let's see, there are 398 pages in this book, and just a second. There are 398 pages in this book, but all the books I read were a lot smaller and more compact, and they had about 458 pages each. The Lord of the Rings starts out with, there was this one man, Sauron, who made a ring, and he and other people made a bunch of rings to help control their respective races, elves, dwarves, and men. There's a little poem that goes with the rings. It's 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, and 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to bring them into the darkness, 1 ring to bring them, and in the darkness bind them, in Mordor where the shadows lie. Kind of explains that a little bit. So the 1 ring was with Sauron, and then all the elves and men gathered, and then they fought him. They killed him, and then Gilead, king of the elves, died, and Endil, king of the men, died. Endil's son Isildur cut off the ring off his hand and cut off his fingers, making the ring fall into his hand. Took the ring and decided to keep it, and he got killed by orcs, which is the main fighting force of Mordor. And then it fell into the hands of Gollum. He pretty much hid with it. It makes them live for a long time, and it will, if you put it on, it will make you look invisible, but it really just puts you into the Wraith world. So then it got into the hands of Bilbo after Gollum, and so Bilbo gave it to Frodo, and that's where the main part of the book begins. So Gandalf, a wizard, told Frodo that he needs to take it to Rivendell. So Frodo and some of his friends are taking it to Rivendell, and they start in the Shire, which is right here, and so they end up stopping at a place really close to the Shire. Where is it? Can't remember the name right now. Bree. They stop in Bree. And so they stop in Bree, where they meet a man named Aragorn. And they continue going, and they stop at another place to rest, Weathertop. At Weathertop, and along the entire way, they were being chased by Black Riders, which are actually Ringwraith. Their real name is Ringwraith, or the Nazgul. They were the 9 men that had the 9 rings. So they stop there. Frodo gets stabbed with a wraith blade, and so they end up hurrying them all to Rivendell, where they cure Frodo, and they have a council on the ring, where it is decided that where they have 9 ring race, so they would have 9 men, the Fellowship of the Ring. So they had 4 hobbits: Frodo Baggins, Samwise Gamgee, Peregrine Took, who they call Pippin, and Meriadoc Brandybuck, who they call Merry. 4 hobbits, 2 men: Aragorn, who is related to Endil. He is the heir of Endil. And Boromir, who is the son of the steward of Gondor, whose name is Denthor. Then 1 elf, Legolas, and 1 dwarf, Gimli. And then the wizard Gandalf. Where there's also the wizard Saruman. There's 5 wizards, only really named 3, but in this book there's Saruman. and Saruman lives in Isengard. So while they're there, they're planning on how to get this to Mordor, where they have to throw it into Mount Doom or Ordium. That's the only way to destroy the ring. And so they can't go, and they decide they can't go through Isengard. So they decide to go over the Pass of Carteris, which is over these mountains right here. That's one of the only ways to get down. Or they could make this super long trip this way or this way. They can't go through the Gap of Rohan, which would be the easiest, because Saruman's there and he would take it. And so they can't get over the Pass of Carteris, though, because it's also too snowy. So they have to go through the Mines of Moria, where Gandalf falls, battling a Barlog, which is a monster of fire and shadow. And he falls on a bridge where he says his famous lines, "You shall not pass," in the movie. And in the book he says, "You cannot pass." So they get out of there without Gandalf. And then they get to Lorien, where it's just another place with the elves, where Galadriel lives. She is like one of the high elves, and she and Elrond are two important people, and she has a ring, one of the 3 rings for the elves, and she shows it to Frodo at some point, and they stay there for a while, and they decide to keep going. They keep going down, and then they get to Amon Hul, which is somewhere along this river, and they decide to rest there, where they're waylaid by orcs. And so Frodo and Boromir tried to take the ring from Frodo, so Frodo put it on and turned invisible, and then he ran. And so then they were waylaid by orcs, so Frodo, he decided that he was just gonna not have anybody else get hurt, and decided to just go to Mordor by himself. So while he was leaving, Sam actually found him and decided that he was going to go with him, even though Frodo didn't really like it. But Frodo was glad because he had somebody else to go with him. And then Boromir was defending Pippin and Merry, and he was killed by orcs. And so then the two groups split up. Okay. My 4 main characters. Okay, I like Sam because he's always helping Frodo no matter what, and he likes him a lot, and so he's always helpful. Sam Gamgee. I like Aragorn because he's pretty cool. He's always helping, and he knows a lot, and he lives for a really long time because he is of Newmore, and so elves live forever, and when elves have children with men, they're Numorian, and they live for longer too. And so Aragorn lives for a long time. I like Pippin because Pippin and Merry, because they're really brave, and even though they could have had it easy and stayed in the Shire where their lives would have been great, they decided to go with Frodo. The setting is, I already kind of traced it. They start in the Shire, which is the land of the hobbits, and then they start going through, this is Middle-earth, kind of. So they start way up here in the Shire, and then they get to Bree, then to Weathertop, then to Rivendell, which is the land of the elves. Go through Moria, which is named Khazad-dûm, and it was made by the dwarves. They made it in the mountains, under the mountains. They got through Khazad-dûm, got to Lorien, which is a forest made of golden trees that have golden leaves named Melorn trees. And then they go down the road for Anduin, and get to Amon Hul, which is starting into the land of men. The theme is, if I had to say a theme, it would be stick to your path, because they stick to what they're doing no matter what. That is the end.